Okay, a couple of weeks ago I posted a video where I said ask me anything, and I was completely overwhelmed with the response there. Over 800 comments on that video, most of which are questions, some of which are posts containing more than one question. I'm going to do my best to answer some of those questions today. What I've done is I've taken a lot of the questions that lots of people asked, I've taken the weightier questions that people asked, and a random selection of other questions. I can't answer every single question in this video, but what I'm going to do is revisit that original video and I will answer every single question in those comments inside the thread. So a lot of you had questions about Eva and what breed of dog is she? Well, the simplest answer to that is we just don't know, actually. Eva was adopted, so she was a rescue dog. She came from Portugal. She was rescued there because apparently in Portugal they have a policy of rounding up stray dogs, and if they're not collected or claimed within a week or so, they are destroyed. So Eva was rescued by a charity called Many Tears as a puppy, and we took her on as a puppy, rescued from Portugal. She's got her own little doggy passport, and she looks super cute in that passport. Still a real cutie now she's grown up. She's 5 years old. We don't know what breed or mix she is. We assume she's a mix of terrier and whippet, mainly because when she runs you can see the whippet or running breed in her. Do I have any other pets or animals other than Eva? Well, apart from the stuff that's in my ecosphere on the windowsill here, no. At the moment Eva is our only animal in the household. In the past we've had budgies, and I really enjoyed having budgies. We trained them to be hand tame and to talk to us and everything, and that was very enjoyable. Obviously can't really have budgies and a dog in the house at the same time. That would be a bit of a disaster. Question, is your doggo an impala in disguise? Well, she is a little deer, isn't she? So somebody asked, you mentioned in one of your videos that Eva saved your life. Would you care to elaborate on that? Sure, okay. Well, she didn't drag me out of a burning building, and she didn't rescue me from a raging river or anything like that. But I'm not exaggerating, I think, when I say that she did save my life. About 5 years ago, I was going through a really difficult phase at work where I was working extremely long hours with hardly any breaks and hardly any annual leave. And my mental health, I think, was in a downward spiral. In retrospect, I think when I look back, I suspect I had some kind of a nervous breakdown, in fact, and it wasn't a good time. And my reaction to that was not to withdraw, but to actually double down on the work and just to pile myself into what I was doing. And as a result, I ran myself beyond exhaustion, and my mental and physical health was in sharp decline. And around about that time, Eva came along and gave me a compelling reason to do two things. One is to get out of the armchair and get outside and experience fresh air and daylight and the outdoors. And the other thing was just caring for something which was very dependent on my nurture. So that kind of pulled me out of myself and gave me the impetus to get out of that spiral. So whilst that's not perhaps as dramatic as dragging me out of a burning building, I'm not exaggerating when I say that I think that spiral I was on was not going to end well. And Eva was a significant part of turning that around. So lots of questions about Jenny. Who is Jenny? How did Jenny and I meet? And so on. Let's go and talk about that now. By the way, I think many of you probably know Jenny's name more than you know my name. So people did ask what's my name. My name's Mike, or Michael. Anyway, let's go talk about Jenny. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions about Jenny. So while I do this, I'm just going to repot this plant so I've got something to occupy my hands, so it's just not me talking to the camera. So a bunch of questions about Jenny. Who is Jenny? Well, Jenny is my wife. I am Jenny's husband. That is how that arrangement works. And so how long have we known each other? Jenny and I have been married for 28 years now. So and we've known each other a little bit longer than that. How did we meet? We met via a pen pal agency. This was back in the early 1990s, and the normal way for people to meet was kind of down the pub or something like that, but I didn't really have very much success with that. And so in my early 20s I signed up with a pen pal agency, and this was before the internet. This was before really the internet became a big thing, and certainly before there were sites where you sign up and interact with other people. And so I signed up with a pen pal agency, and it was a quite strange thing actually by modern standards. So if I tell you how that worked, so what happened is you signed up with the thing by post, and you sent them your details. You filled in an application form. You sent them your details, and they put you on their database. And then every month they sent out the entire database to every member. So I would receive in the post a fat envelope full of names and addresses of people, along with information about what kind of thing they were looking for, whether they were looking for just a platonic friendship, or whether they were looking to meet someone they might be interested in marrying, or whether they just wanted to be pen pals. And yeah, the whole database would go out to the whole community, which by modern privacy standards is probably quite a frightening idea, isn't it? That every month I would receive in the post printed sheets containing names, addresses, phone numbers, and some personal information about the preferences and lifestyles of probably 1,000 people. Kind of weird, isn't it? So anyway, Jenny and I met that way. So I wrote to her from the list. She was living nearby. She was living in Winchester at the time. I was living in Southampton. So I wrote to her. We exchanged a few letters, and then decided to meet and hit it off immediately, and were married fairly shortly afterwards. Within a year we got married, and we've been together for 28 years now. So why doesn't Jenny show up more often in my videos is a question a few people asked, and the plain fact is she's just a little bit camera shy. She's just got a different view of personal privacy and so on to me, slightly different views. She does like to interact a little bit in some of the videos. She really enjoyed the budget challenge we did together. But yeah, she's just a bit more of a private person than I am. She doesn't always want to be in the videos, so very often you'll see her lurking at the edge of frame. That might change over time actually. She is gradually getting used to the idea of being in the videos, but I'm not going to force it. What does Jenny think of the channel? Well, my whole family really have treated this as a bit of humouring my midlife crisis really. Most of the time people see this as the wacky thing that I do and tolerate it, and they're pretty supportive generally. Jenny's been really supportive, and she's helped me come up with ideas, she's helped me build things, she's helped me plan a lot of videos, so very supportive. And yeah, she's loving the fact that I'm getting to do what I love to do. So even though Jenny's not in a lot of the videos necessarily, when we go places, when I go and do forest walks and so on, Jenny's very often there with me, just not appearing in the video. What does Jenny think of the scambaiting? Well, that's an interesting one actually, because Jenny was originally a little bit sceptical of the scambaiting and a little bit concerned that I might be getting myself into trouble. And that's a legitimate concern, and you know, bless her for thinking of me like that. Over time, I think she's come to realise that I kind of know what I'm doing, that I am taking sensible precautions to protect us and our privacy and security. And yeah, I wouldn't have said that the scambaiting stuff is her favourite genre of my videos, but yeah, she understands what I'm doing now and supports me completely in it. So, moving on.
Questions about me. Okay, how old am I? Well, I'm in my early 50s. I was born in the late 1960s. I think that's probably about as much detail as you need. Was I ever a scout? Yeah, I was in the Cub Scouts for the full duration. I did join the Scouts after that. Didn't really get on with it so much as I did with the Cubs. So the Cubs was great because we were always out in the woods, rummaging around, looking for things, whittling sticks and so on. I really loved that. When we got into Scouts, it was a little bit more serious and organised, and I found that a bit boring. What's my first memory? My first memory is eating Marmite on toast and trying to tell my mum that it was making my teeth itch. And I've identified when this memory occurred because when I was about 3 years old, we moved out to Cyprus and lived there for 4 years. And I know that this memory predates that. So I think I must have been about 2.5, 3 years old, and I was eating Marmite on toast and I was trying to tell my mum that my teeth were itching. I think some of my teeth were actually coming through. So I think I was actually teething when that happened. So that's my earliest memory. What's the accomplishment I'm most proud of? Well, I think it's got to be raising two quite balanced and grounded children. I've got a son and a daughter. Both of them are grown up to adulthood now and have left home. They're still quite local and we see them frequently. And I can't take all the credit for it because they've done it themselves. Jenny's been a huge influence on them. But as a team effort between me, Jenny and themselves, we've actually managed to raise two really good kids. And they're sort of branching out into their adult life now. And that's I think that's probably the biggest and best thing I've ever done. Where do I see myself in 10 years? Well, here's the thing. I don't really have a long-term plan. I never have had a long-term plan. Most of my life, I've just really been looking at the next few steps. And so, yeah, don't really have one. Don't know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. I hope I'm going to be doing something like this and more of it. And maybe more variety as well. If you become a millionaire, what's the first thing you would do or buy? Okay, I think actually the thing I would do here would be buy some premises on which we could expand atomic shrimp into an industry that employs people. I would love to expand atomic shrimp and expand the atomic shrimp ethic, which is just do a bit of everything, have fun doing it. I would love to expand that into a little cottage industry of some sort. What are some of my favourite books? Well, probably my favourite book of all time is Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. It's just a fantastic read. It's, how can I sum it up? In summary, it's like a case study on the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's three guys think they know how to do everything, go off, decide to have a boat trip, and it's an utter disaster. And it's a disaster because of their incompetence, but they are too stupid to recognise their own incompetence. Now, I think that's probably enough spoilers for that book. Thoroughly recommend you go off and read it. It can be a frustrating read, but it's a fantastic little insight into how human nature can frustrate itself and cause its own problems. What's the favourite thing I've ever had from Weird Stuff in a Can? I think it's probably got to be the braised eels, which I think was in either the first episode or one of the very early episodes. The braised Chinese eels in the little rectangular cans. I may have to stop eating those though, actually, because I recently learned that there is an illegal trade in juvenile eels. They're being captured in this country, in the UK, in large numbers, and then illegally shipped to China, where they're farmed, essentially. It's threatening to make them extinct in this country, which I think is got to stop. So I may have to stop buying that product. What countries have I visited in the world, and which place was your favourite? Well, I've travelled quite extensively in Europe, both on business and pleasure, and travelled to a few other places. I'll stick a list up on the screen, it's probably easiest. I think my favourite place has got to be Spain, southern Spain, partly because my mum lives there, and so I get to visit there quite a lot. But I just find the culture and the lifestyle there in Spain really, really appealing. So, I'm willing to bet that your favourite Monty Python skit is the argument clinic. No, it isn't. You have however many ingredients you need. What goes into making your dream sandwich? I have trouble with favourites, I've got to say. When there are lots of choices, I have a lot of trouble having a firm favourite. When there are fewer choices, I'm okay. I can often say, okay, that one's my favourite. But when there's a vast array of choices, which there is with sandwiches, I don't usually have trouble making a choice if there's a lot on offer, but I do have trouble identifying a persistent favourite. But anyway, let's try and answer that question. Favourite sandwiches. One of my favourite things is to get some really good pork sausages and cook them and have them in a sandwich with some bitter orange marmalade. Bit of a weird sandwich combination, but sausages and marmalade, really nice in a sandwich. Cheese, tomato and pickle, also really good. So sharp cheddar cheese, sliced tomatoes and a nice English chutney. And thirdly, I don't know if this really counts as a sandwich, but I love to split a croissant, put some crispy bacon in there, a bit of cheese and some cherry jam. That's really tasty. What's my favourite colour? Okay, this one's easy. Purple. What were some of my childhood favourites, like movies, TV shows and so on? Okay, I used to love the stop motion animation of Oliver Postgate. So the Clangers, Bagpuss, Campbellwick Green, some of those early stop motion children's TV, just amazing stuff, and has been a source of inspiration to me. I also used to like anything that was kind of factual or sciencey. So there was a programme called Tomorrow's World on BBC where it was a technology sort of showcasing type of programme. Used to love that. And there was a TV show called How, which was also just a kind of kids science exploration and how the world works type of thing. One of the presenters from the series How, Jack Hargreaves, had his own show called Out of Town, which again was just him showing you old tools and old craft techniques and old country ways and things. I used to love that as well. A lot of people have compared some of my content to Jack Hargreaves, and I take that as a huge compliment. Work and education. Okay, what did I do as a degree? I didn't go to university. I left school to go to college on a 2-year computer technology course, and I flunked it. I went onto the youth training scheme and did that for a year, and then I went into a job in a warehouse packing boxes. So while I talk about some of these other questions, I'll pop up a diagram. This is basically my career path from leaving college to today. Do I have an engineering background? Only really a little bit. The half of the BTEC National Diploma in Computer Technology course that I did way back when I left school had a lot of mechanical and electrical engineering in it. Because at that time, that was back in the 1980s, the computing industry was still very much in its infancy. And so a lot of computer technology was actually engineering. So a little bit of engineering background from there, but no, most of it's just amateur tinkering. How do I have so much free time to make videos and work on them daily? Well, the main thing there is that what you're seeing on screen in my channel is what I do in my free time. I make videos about things that interest me and things that I would do in my free time anyway. So it kind of is my leisure activity. What inspired me to gain all that background knowledge of the natural world around me? I've always been interested in nature, and to be honest, I think I've never quite lost that curiosity that children have. That kind of, let's have a look at that. Let's have a closer look at that. What's that thing doing? What's that about? Never really lost that curiosity that drives you to ask questions and try to find out little things, answers that people already know. So I'm not doing any groundbreaking research here, but I am interested to know things about the world around me, and yeah, I always have been really. You mentioned you had a day job. Can you tell us what field you work in? Right, so at the moment I'm currently in IT management, so I manage a small IT team for a logistics company. That's on the end of this circuitous career path thing right here. How many hours go into making one video? On average, it's about 1 hour of production time for 1 minute of screen time. Sometimes more than that, sometimes a lot less. So for example, weird stuff in a can is one of the simpler ones. So I set up cameras, I just film myself opening and tasting stuff in a can. The edit is a lot simpler than a lot of the other things, although I do use 3 camera angles, but that's fairly simple. And you might think that the Scambaiting ones are simpler because I don't appear on screen, but actually getting all of those slides together, redacting all of the sensitive information, arranging the video, doing little entertaining skits, that's quite time consuming. And so those videos take up probably about 2 hours of production time for every minute on screen. How much planning goes into my videos and how many different projects do I tend to have going on at one time? For planning, I just generally work it out as I go along. I'm quite comfortable winging it a lot of the time. That does mean I make a lot of mistakes, but mistakes are great for learning. How many different projects? Anywhere between 5 and 10 or 15 sometimes. I've got lots of projects on the go at once. I've also got an enormous list of projects I want to do, and that list is growing faster than I can tick things off of it, because every time I have an idea I write it down, and so I'm never bored. I never have an excuse for being bored, because anytime I've got nothing to do I just go and consult my lists and I find an idea that fits the amount of time I have to do. So I very, very seldom experience boredom. So why is the channel called Atomic Shrimp? Okay, way back in the day, way back before all of this happened, I was in a pub talking to a friend of mine. We were trying to find a production studio name or a production company name for an amateur film that my friend was making. It was just a tiny amateur film that he was making for a group of friends, and we were kicking around. He wanted to give it a studio name. So we were kicking around ideas, and we came to the idea that quite often these things are made from 2 different words that don't really fit together. And I came up with Atomic Shrimp. It wasn't the idea he ran with in the end, but when I got home, I checked and the domain atomicshrimp.com was available for purchase, and so I registered the domain, and then I had to create a website, and so it all kicked off from there. It was a bit of a random start, but the name Atomic Shrimp kind of embodies some of the ethic of the place as well, in that it's about smashing things together that don't really fit together and seeing if anything interesting comes out of blending ideas. If YouTube sent you an email saying your videos had used up all their server storage and were allowed to make only one more, what would the topic be? Okay, so if YouTube's about to become static, so there's no new content to be added to YouTube, and I've only got one more video to make, this is an interesting one to answer. I think that means that a lot of people are going to have to find ways of entertaining themselves. So my video, I think, would be about methods you can use to invent entertainment for yourself. Why don't I usually show my face? Well, here it is. Mainly because, well, for one thing, this is not the Mona Lisa, but Also, usually what I'm doing involves working on something, and I need to show you the thing I'm working on. The thing I'm exploring is more important than the thing that's talking about it. How does my family and friends feel about my YouTube popularity? For a very long time, everyone I know regarded my YouTube thing as that thing that Mike does, and it was kind of a bit out there, really. But they humoured me and supported me, and they saw this as really a thing that I do in my spare time, my kind of hobby. And yeah, very supportive, but also a little bit kind of, ooh, yeah, that's your thing. You're a bit strange. Over time, they've been really good to me when they've seen this starting to snowball and the channel starting to take off after 12 years or so. And a lot of them are celebrating along with me the eventual growth and success of this channel. So it's been really very positive. Everybody's been positive and supportive along the way and let me get on with my thing. And now I think everybody's just happy for me that it's turning into something that's what I always dreamed it would. Do nasty comments bother me? They used to more than they do. I respond a lot in the comments because I find it really stimulating to engage with the comments on my videos. And in general, the people who comment on my videos are a lovely crowd. And I really appreciate your interaction because actually it's a source of fresh ideas and it's very stimulating. I'd say if anything bothers me now, it's when I'm misunderstood. When somebody gets the wrong idea and gets angry about that wrong idea and directs their anger at me, I find that a little bit upsetting sometimes. Case in point for that is the £1 limited budget meal challenge thing, where I set myself a budget of £1 for feeding myself 3 meals for a day. A lot of people have perceived that as me preaching to poor people or trying to demonstrate that living on £1 a day is easy. Actually, it's nothing of the sort. What that was, if anything, was a demonstration that that's difficult. I chose to do that because it's difficult. I didn't do that to try to prove that poor people are just slackers or anything like that, but a lot of people have perceived it that way and have attacked me for it. And it's not a reasonable point of view, but it does upset me when people get the wrong idea and dig in on that wrong idea. Why is there such large variety in my videos? Well, this comes back to the curiosity thing again. I don't think I've ever really properly grown up. And so I still have this kind of curiosity about the world around me. And I'm interested in quite a lot of different things. Not everything, but yeah, and what you see here is what I love doing. Why are you so content with what you have? Why do you not jump to pinch as much money as you can from the channel? You're so calm and chill. Why? What, compared to other YouTubers, you're not greedy at all. I'm running this channel primarily because I love doing it. I could monetize it more. I could put mid-roll ads in, but I really don't like mid-roll ads because they get in the way of the content. I'm doing this because I love it. And yeah, I tend to think that if I tried to monetize it to the max, it would become something I don't love anymore. And so I'm trying to keep it balanced, really. I'm doing this because I love sharing all of this stuff. But also, I don't want to make this a chore or a burden for you as the viewers. I want you to enjoy it too. Anyway, you could support the channel, Patreon, donation, video ideas and so on. I haven't got Patreon, I haven't got any way to receive donations. I do appreciate everybody wanting to do that, but it's not possible right now. And I'm not really planning to do that either. So the best way to support me is definitely just to carry on watching my videos. Share them with people who you think might like them, if you know anybody. And yeah, carry on engaging in the comments. Would I ever sell my awesome shirts? I know Jenny makes them, but would you consider selling them as merch? I actually think that's probably not possible because quite a lot of time goes into making them. So I don't know that we could do that cost effectively without farming it out somewhere. And we don't own the pattern for this actually, so the intellectual property is not ours for publishing the pattern out to somebody. Are there any video ideas that you'd like to make, but budget or resource restrictions mean they're unfeasible? Not really so much budget. I would say the limitation on the content I can make is my skills. There are a bunch of things I'd love to do, like, for example, computer animation, but I don't have the skills to do it. I may, over time, acquire some of those skills, so you might see different content types becoming as a result of that. But generally speaking, the limits on the kind of videos I make are more to do with the limits of my skills than they are the budget. Because most of the stuff I do is pretty frugal anyway. How much do I make from YouTube? Right, not going to talk about that as a total because that's just a bit too private, but let's have a look at a couple of videos. quite funny actually. Why do I use a laptop for editing? I'm guessing computers aren't really your thing. Seems weird most Scambaiters have some level of technical aptitude. Okay, it's a bit of a strange way to frame that question, but never mind. Well, I could get a desktop and I would probably get more bang for my buck that way if I got a desktop computer, but laptop is perfectly adequate. And in fact, I'm going to direct you to a video by Technology Connections who answers that question much more fully than I will bother to do, but I agree with everything he said. The reason I use a laptop is mostly social. If I had a desktop computer for editing, it would mean I would be confined to a specific room while I'm doing my editing. I do my editing on a laptop, which means I can go and sit on the sofa and I can continue to engage with my family while I'm tapping away editing captions on a video or something like that. When setup tour, why in holy heck do you have the side computer like that with its keyboard all hanging down? Okay, and when setup tour, right now is when that's happening. I'm in the studio now, but let's go back outside and do a studio tour. Okay, so studio tour. Now, I will warn you, this is a very, very tiny little room. This was the smallest bedroom, and it's now my studio. So, let's go inside. Okay, tiny little room, and let's get the boring bits out of the way first. So this area here, don't worry about all this garbage and junk here. This is a project that's in flight at the moment. I'm going to try and do something interesting with this old PC. This boxed in space here is actually there because of bad architectural design. So there's a staircase here that intersects the room. And so when they built the house, they decided the best solution there is to just box it in. And so there's a boxed in area that takes up quite a bit of space in the room, but it does provide a bit of a useful working surface for me. Loads of storage bits and pieces here, and junk and craft materials and so on, organised as much as I can make it organised in various different themes. So glue and tape, for example, in that one. Paint and stuff over in there. Don't open that one. Okay, and we'll come to the working area in a moment. This is my working at home setup here, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Laser engraver cabinet here with safety specs inside ready to use, and the exhaust hose from that can just easily go out of the window here. Ecosphere, rainwater butt Ecosphere, just doing its thing there. More storage here, just storage for weird stuff in a can, various other craft bits, tools, etc. is all in there. The Franken FT80 terminal. This little laptop here, this was my first netbook, Samsung NC10 I think it is, and it came with Windows XP on it, but I've actually installed Bunsen Labs Linux on there, and I just use that for recording audio now. So I just use that for capturing audio from my Blue Yeti microphone. Wall of things. Wall of other things. So various bits of weird stuff in a can, the various play buttons I've made, the Wobble Dog 9003i, my Altair 8800 clone, some interesting books, various other bits and pieces. Storage for card and large sheets of material down here, and that's about it. So let's talk about the working space now. So this is I'll take a step back so you can see it. So that's the working space for recording videos, but also that's where I work from home. I'm going to stick the camera on this tripod now. This is the tripod I use for my top-down work, and I've just got a stick, basically. This boom arm is just a piece of timber that I cut. It's got a tripod mount hole there, so it bolts onto the tripod, and then it's got this little small rig universal joint here and a phone clip, because all of my filming is done using a Huawei P20 Pro mobile phone. So I'm going to mount the camera in here now so that we can talk about this working area. Okay, the table space is configured at the moment for working at home, so I've got my dual screen set up with my laptop. Quite a few people commented on why have I got my laptop like this. There are a couple of reasons really. One is because I need the screen at eye level if I'm sitting down like this. Really the top of the screen should be about eye level, slightly below, for best ergonomics and to prevent back strain and all that sort of thing. So I need the screen at eye level. Now I could have built a stand where the laptop is like that and the keyboard's flat,
while the screen's there, but this was just easier. It is a laptop that is designed to fold all the way around. It's an X360 Envy, so that hinge is a structural component, so it's perfectly okay to stand it up like that. It's a titanium body shell, so it's nice and strong. So that's why I have the laptop like that, standing up, and it's at the same level then as my second screen here, which plugs in with just this little docking cable. So let's move the laptop out of the way. The stand, by the way, stand is just something I knocked up using the plastic balls from roll-on deodorants and 6mm dowels. And thanks to Pocket 83 for tips on how to drill into spheres at specific angles. That's just a little quick and easy laptop stand that I can move out of the way. The screen also folds completely out of the way when not in use, like so. So when I want to use this desk for not working at home, I can very quickly clear it and use it that way. So let's have a quick look at what it looks like when I've got a filming set up. So I've got light stands here, which I can switch on in this mess of cables down here. No, wrong one. Which I can switch on in that mess of cables down there. So I've got lighting on the desk, and these are, well, Dasny D50s, which I've got from Amazon, and they link to one another, so you can adjust them. You can adjust the colour and the brightness with a single dial on the back of one of them. Second camera setup here, so that's one of my old phones, just an old Windows Nokia Lumia 720, I think, but it's got an excellent camera in there, and so I use that for my second angle when I'm doing especially weird stuff in a can. Third angle's over there, that's just a little action cam that I use for the rear angle. And then the top-down rostrum camera type view is, again, using this tripod mount here. So I will tend to sit there, set all three cameras going, and then film using them. The microphone's a fairly new addition, actually. I normally just use the native microphone in the camera that I'm using, but I've got my Blue Yeti microphone there mounted on a pole now. I need to make a shock mount for that, because at the moment it's actually coupled directly to the pole, which means any vibration on the floor or on the pole will transmit directly into the microphone. So there'll be a project soon to make a shock mount for that. That's another thing that's coming up soon. I guess I forgot to say, actually, this monitor arm here that allows me to swing the monitor out the back there is just a pole mounted monitor. This pole arrangement was meant to clamp onto the table, but I found I managed to knock the stops out of both ends of the tube, and I've just threaded it on top of my lighting pole here so that it mounts on the same pole, and that works for me. So I think that's probably pretty much the end of the studio tour. That's it. It's very, very compact. It might seem cluttered, actually, and it might seem intolerably busy to you guys, but I work with it fine. I know where everything is. I can almost reach everything from that seat down there. Noticed your Logitech keyboard. Are you a gamer? No, I'm really not, actually. I hardly play any games at all. I just don't find I have the time to do that. The last game I played, in terms of played through to completion, would be a little platformer game, retro platformer game called Seclus. And I haven't played that really seriously since my kids were small. So yeah, don't really play games. Do I code? If so, what language?
Yes, I do code a little bit, but nothing really very modern. So here's a list of the languages I code for in various degrees of competence. Am I using Windows or Linux, and do I prefer one over the other? I use both actually. So I've got Windows on my main laptop, but Linux, I've got a little laptop back here that's got Bunsen Labs Linux on it, which I just use for audio recording. So I quite like both. Generally, I probably use Windows more than Linux because Windows just happens to have the apps that I use for my productivity, but I'm quite comfortable using either. And I like free stuff, so why wouldn't I like Linux? What's my first experience with a computer and how do I feel in retrospect? Okay, my first computer was a Sinclair ZX81, and I had that quite soon after it came out. The unexpanded ZX81 had 1K of RAM, and I learned to code BASIC on a 1K computer. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about, 1K of RAM is enough space to store this much text. So there's not a lot to work with there. And I later upgraded that with a full-size keyboard and a programmable graphics card and a 16K RAM pack. Later on I got a ZX Spectrum, and again I upgraded that with a full-size keyboard and in fact a floppy disk drive as well, the Opus Discovery. What made you start recording your awesome videos and your YouTube channel? I think it was actually, I had the website for a long time before I started doing YouTube. And I think it was just that YouTube became an easier way to explain what I was doing. Rather than taking lots of photos of a project and then writing down everything that has happened in that project, it was simpler in some ways just to set a camera running and talk about it while I was going. So it was simplicity and expediency that got me into it. But once I got started on it, there were opportunities to do things in videos that you can't do on a web page anyway. So it was a case of progression, I suppose. Are there any conspiracy theories out there you think might have some truth to them? None that spring to mind. What's some advice you could give to someone in their late 20s with no clear career path, struggling to find their purpose in life? Okay, lots of people have a grand plan for their entire life when they leave school. And I think there's a bit of an expectation that everybody should be like that. Not everybody is like that, and not everybody's going to be like that. If you don't have a plan for your whole life, don't fret about that. That can be completely normal. At least as normal as me, so maybe not that normal. But anyway, if you can't think of what your entire career path is going to be, just focus on what the next few steps might be. Have a look around you for opportunities and explore the next few steps. Don't worry about the big long-term plan. That can worry about itself. You can tackle that later. Have a think about what the next step might be and the step after that. Where do I want to take my YouTube channel over the next few years? More of the same. And more of the same. Lots more exploration of the things we've already done, some exploration of some new things, but no real firm plans. We're going to do it step by step. Do I have any advice for being happy and positive? Yes, I do. So, we are not always in control of our feelings. However, we are usually in control of our actions and choices. So, whilst we might not feel happy and positive, we can make a choice to do something that will make us feel happy and positive. There is a broader version of that which is called cognitive behaviour therapy, and I didn't invent it. But in a nutshell, you're not always in control of your feelings. You're not always going to be in control of your feelings, but you are in control of your actions, generally speaking. Act to make yourself happier and more positive, because you'll thank yourself for it in the end. What's your favourite toy as a child and as an adult? Lego. Definitely, hands down, without a doubt, Lego. Don't play with it so much as an adult, but I really enjoyed when I had kids and we introduced them to Lego, the chance to play with Lego again. So best toy ever is Lego. Are there any interests you have, things you'd like to make videos about which you don't think would work as a video or go down well? None really spring to mind. There are a few things I've done in the past that I'm not sure would go down well on this channel, but we might still have a go anyway. I quite like to sing, for example, but I'm not really sure I should subject you guys to it. Do I smoke? No. I started smoking when I was about 15, 16, and I carried on until my early 20s, and then I gave up completely. And I'm glad I did. So a couple of related questions here. One says, what's a project or hobby that's easy to get started with, but in your opinion is quite satisfying? And the other one is, if I could recommend a hobby that I think is underrated and everybody should try, what should it be? I'm going to answer these two questions together because they are quite similar. So my recommendation is have a look at traditional crafts where you get something to hold at the end of it. So for example, I carved this wooden spoon with an axe and with knives, and it's in a drawer in the kitchen, and I use it quite frequently when I'm stirring a cake batter or a soup. And every single time I pick up this spoon, it makes me happy. And so my recommendation would be, go and find something that has a physical output
that you can keep and will have lasting utility, and then enjoy that item that you've made. So that could be wood carving, that could be pottery, that could be basket weaving, it could be embroidery, it could be all sorts of different things. But I will recommend any kind of traditional style craft where you have a physical thing at the end of it that you can use every day. Foraging. Would it be safe to identify fungi by using Google Lens? I'm going to say no, because actually you shouldn't really identify fungi by photos alone. Google Lens is brilliant, but unless you're going to make Google Lens eat the thing, then Google Lens should not be your primary source of identification. It might be a good way of getting you started on the right track of identifying where in the other resources to go and look, but you definitely shouldn't identify mushrooms solely by pictures. There is a lot more to it than that. The habitat, the season, the texture, associated plants, all sorts of other things, all sorts of other factors, and you should match all of those against the reference sources, not just what it looks like. How do you start foraging? It seems fun, but I don't know much about mushrooms or different plants or animals. Well, my advice there is don't start with mushrooms. Start with something that's a bit safer and a bit easier. So, for example, start with things like go and find some stinging nettles. You can identify stinging nettles with your eyes shut. You'll figure out what I mean by that in a minute. Start with something benign and safe like that, and get into the idea of identifying things based on reference sources. Also, I would say take a field guide out and just start identifying plants and things without any intent to pick them or forage them. Just go out and enjoy nature and try and identify a few things. Learn identification skills, and that will help with the next step, which is identifying things you can pick and eat. Do I have any advice for someone who'd like to start hiking? Yes. Get some appropriate shoes and break them in thoroughly. So get some good shoes that are appropriate for the kind of terrain you're going to be traversing, and wear them around the house for a week or so. Wear them to work, wear them to the shops for short trips to break them in before you go on a long walk. Definitely do not go on a long walk with brand new shoes. Your feet will just be pure blisters when you come back. Ever get sick from something you've eaten? I've never actually been poisoned by something that I've foraged. I have got a weird sensitivity to pine nuts. So about half of the time I've ever eaten pine nuts, I've been violently sick within a very short space of time afterwards. But yeah, never been poisoned by a mushroom, never made that mistake, because I am incredibly careful with the identification. If I'm not 100% certain about a thing I'm identifying, I don't take it home. How do I find so many mushrooms? Well, I'm out there a lot looking for them is one factor. And of course you only see primarily my successes rather than failures. Have you ever picked or eaten psilocybin mushrooms, probably liberty caps? If so, maybe a safety video could be a future idea when autumn comes around and people go picking and eating anything they find or have a vague, uneducated suspicion is a psilocybe. The only advice I can really give you on this is don't do that. I'm not going to give you a guide on how to identify hallucinogenic mushrooms because it is not my preference to consume those mushrooms personally. That's not so much a moral stance as a practical one. It's not something I want to do, so it's not something I'm going to recommend to you. But in general, a good rule for life is don't put anything in your mouth unless you're absolutely sure what it is and what it's going to do. So there's a long question here about the history of my scambaiting. So I'll try to answer that. So about 15, 16 years ago, I encountered scambaiting on online forums and decided I would have a go. And at that point, I was getting quite a lot of scam emails just in my regular mailbox, and so I did this long scambaiting thing where I pretended my name was Richard Dastardly and I was messing around a scammer who said his name was Austin Wember. His intent was to kidnap me. He wanted me to fly out to meet him, and I'm pretty sure his intent was to kidnap me for ransom. He meant me harm. Of course I had no intent of going there. I messed him around, made him quite angry in the end. My account of that whole thing is still on the 419eater forum, so I'll put a link in the video description if you want to go back and see the beginning of my scambaiting thing. Do I get viewers pretending to be scammers to get on the channel? Yes, I do. So I've had quite a few people try to give me second-hand scams by email, say, hey, would you like to bait this scammer? Sadly, some of those have turned out to be people actually just giving me their sock puppet account and then trying to bait me. And some of them got quite angry when I revealed how obvious it was that they were not a scammer. Some of them got quite cross with me about that. And as a result, I don't accept donor scams anymore. So I don't accept scams from other people because whilst 99% of them are probably earnest, the 1% is a bit troublesome, and I'm afraid they spoiled it for everyone.
Are you the same chap as Jim Browning? Your voices are so similar. That's funny, because I don't think he sounds anything like me, but there you go. Is there any way for me to make a collab with Jim Browning? I would love to, actually, but I'm not sure how that would work. Jim Browning's incredibly competent on the live scambaiting with tech support scammers. I'm really in awe of his skill set, actually, and I would love to do a collab with him, but I just don't know how we could do that. Why is my scambaiting alias mange tout? Does it have anything to do with French? It does. Mange tout means eat everything, or eat all in French. And way back in time, before Atomic Shrimp, my online alias was mange tout anyway, because I was running a small website which was mostly about food and foraging, and so mange tout seemed like an appropriate name. And that account I still got, which I only use for scambaiting now, and it's as old as the hills, which is part of the reason it gets so many scam emails. Do you ever get angry in real life? If so, how do you deal with it? Well, I do. I'm a human being like everyone else, and I do get angry in real life, and I sometimes get frustrated. What I try to do is take a step back and allow my emotions to subside before I act. Try to leave a pause for me to just calm down, settle down, and make a logical and rational choice. It doesn't always work, and I'm not perfect. What advice would you give to young men in a world where gender roles are being rightfully questioned? Well, the world's always changing, and in my view, there's several different things you can do. You can resist that change. That never seems to go very well. You can allow that change to happen and just step out of the way, which is kind of what I do most of the time. I'm not an activist, but I'm more than happy to support people making positive changes in the world. There's a kind of 3 ages of man thing going on here. When you're young, you have aspirations to change the world, and that's good. You probably won't change everything you want to change, but you will press to make the world a better place if you're motivated to do so, and that's a good thing. In the middle of your life, you'll recognize that you're not a force for change anymore, and the best thing you can do there is to support those younger people who are wanting to make the positive changes that you didn't make. And so, yeah, sometimes the best thing you can do is just get out of their way and let them do it. Other times they'll need a little bit of your support, but generally speaking, you won't be the one initiating the change when you're in the middle of your life, which is where I'm at the moment. When you get a bit older, I've noticed actually what tends to happen there is you've had enough of change, and you really want the world to stay the same as it is now, or or you want the world to go back to the way it used to be. Well, that's not going to happen. So I'm hoping that I will delay that kind of phase of my life as long as possible. Sometimes change in the world only comes about as a result of those older people who don't want change leaving the planet. What's your opinion on Brexit? Okay, here we go. Some of you may not like this. I didn't want Brexit. I'm quite happy being part of the European community. My experience of being part of Europe has been almost exclusively positive. I had no reason to want to leave the EU. That's my honest opinion. That's based on my life experience, and so I didn't want Brexit. However, it's happening. And ultimately, even though we went through a very wobbly phase in the middle there, ultimately I think the process by which we've decided to go ahead with it has eventually been democratic. And so I'm not going to say happy. I'm satisfied that we got to a point where we are of a consensus that that's going to be the thing we do. And essentially, the most recent general election we had was in fact our second referendum. So I'm satisfied that we as a nation got to the position we're going for via a democratic process. So I'm not going to oppose that. In my personal opinion, I don't think Brexit's going to be great for this country. I still don't think it's going to be good, but it's happening. So we've got to deal with it. And I will approach that in the same way I approach any other difficult challenge, which is try to make the best of it. What are my thoughts on death? Well, similar to my thoughts on Brexit, actually. It's happening whether you like it or not. So we just have to make the best of it. If you've got anything you want to do, then now's the time to do it rather than later. There might not be a later. Did I find the video about my hands cathartic? Yes, I definitely did. Putting that stake in the ground and saying, okay, I've recognised that this is a thing you're all talking about. And we talked about this, guys. And in some cases, you're an idiot for carrying on talking about it. So yeah, that was definitely worth a rite of passage, and I would say actually the value of that video was more for me than it was for anybody else. It was a statement, it was a stake in the ground, and now we've done that, I can always just refer back to that and say, guys, we talked about this. What do I think about my Argentinian fans? Well, elephant in the room, our two nations used to be at war with each other, but the war's long done, we're all just folk now. So you said my ignorance of how we are viewed there is vast. I would say that's probably mirrored at this side. I would say rather than any kind of animosity towards Argentina, I would say that there's just a general sense of ignorance at the moment in the UK. And I would say most people don't even really think about your country. And that's a bit of a shame, isn't it? So I'm going to take a mental note here to go and find out some things about Argentina. And my usual entry point for any kind of culture and country is to look at the food. So I'm going to go off and study some of your food. If you want to come back to me and recommend some things I should try, I'd love to do that. And I would love to use that as a little bridge to understand each other a little bit better. And we've got a couple of questions here that I grouped together. So trans rights, Mr. Atomic Shrimp. What do I think about the HBTQ plus community? I'm assuming that acronym is the same as what I would call in the UK LGBTQ plus, or one of those acronyms anyway. And I'm grouping with this, pineapple on pizza, yes or no? Now, not that I want to trivialise these other two questions to the level of pineapple on pizza, but I think there's a common theme here. Bear with me a minute, I'm trying not to be insensitive. Nobody has the right to interfere with what somebody else is doing that doesn't affect them and is harming nobody. Ultimately, whether it's a thing that you feel is part of your identity or whether it's a thing that you want to do, if nobody's getting harmed, nobody has the right to stop you doing that. So in the particular case of pineapple on pizza, it's not my personal favourite. In fact, as I discussed, I have trouble having favourites when there are lots of choices. But once in a while, why not? But if you love it, don't let anybody stop you doing it. And in the case of these other gender and identity type of topics, same answer. If you're harming no one, don't let anybody stop you being yourself. Specifically though, I would say that my awareness of gender identity issues and so on is theoretical rather than practical. So it's a little bit too theory. So I was thinking about getting myself along to Pride at some point to kind of confront any prejudices I might still have inside of me, to try and break those down and figure out what they are and then deal with them. But in summary, if you're not hurting anyone, whether what you're doing is a choice or whether it's part of your identity, don't let anybody stop you. Are you autistic? I'm asking because I am, and I wonder if you are as well, due to some things I saw in your videos that might be hints for it, such as your clothes, your way of reacting to trolls, etc. So, not as far as I know. I went off to Psych Central and I did this autism and Asperger's screening quiz and I scored very low on there. So as far as I can tell, not really. But this is not scientific and it's not conclusive. This is really just a first stage screening quiz. But as far as I know, no, I'm not. I'm not sure what it is that you're seeing. My clothes, my weird clothes, it's a style choice. I'm not sure whether by reacting to trolls you're talking about in the comments or whether you're talking about in the scambaiting. In the scambaiting, I'm playing a character who's obtuse by nature, usually, and so there might be some perception that obtuse nature is a autism spectrum trait. So not really sure, but as far as I know, no, I'm not. Also, I'd like to know if you collect something. Well, I had a go at collecting various different things like stamps and fossils and minerals and things when I was growing up, but no, never really settled down and collected anything thoroughly and never really collected anything obsessively. Which languages do I speak? Tiny little bit of French, tiny bit of German, English pretty good with, and Spanish is probably the foreign language that I wouldn't say I'm fluent in, but I know enough to be able to order food, to be able to say what's that, how many of those can I have, and that sort of thing. For what reason are you not a vegan? You acknowledge the deaths of animals but continue eating meat and secretions. I found this surprising. This is a tricky one because whilst I acknowledge that there is a problem with the human race creating harm and damage to the environment and suffering, I do not believe that can be minimised to zero, and actually I don't necessarily think that it's realistic to try to minimise that to zero. So if I can just show you the extremes of view that I've been exposed to. On the one hand, I get people saying, why aren't you a vegan? You should be a vegan. So I get comments saying, go vegan, or in this particular case, you mean it's the dead carcass of an innocent animal that's rendered and all the stuff unusable as meat are ground up for you disgust. That doesn't quite make sense, but okay. At the other end of the spectrum, I had somebody say to me, and here's a thing that they think is a completely normal statement on a video where I think I made a banana sandwich. Do you ever eat something healthy like raw grass-fed beef? And then on another video, I think where I was making a vegetarian food, somebody said all you need is good quality steaks, eggs and unpasteurized milk. We've got these two different extremes of view. At one end, people say we shouldn't eat animal
products at all. And at the other end, we seem to have people saying you should eat nothing but animal products. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm an omnivore by virtue of being a human. So I'm kind of in the middle ground. And whilst I'm trying to reduce the amount of harm and damage to the environment that I make, I have to recognise that everything we do causes harm and damage. And so it is not something that can be perfected. And I'm sorry that I don't occupy the extreme that you would like me to, but there you go. It's just not a thing I'm likely to do in my lifetime. What are your political leanings and why? Politics is so dull, so I don't really want to talk very much about this, but I went off to the Political Compass website and scored myself on Political Compass, and here's where I am. So I'm somewhere in the middle of the left libertarian square. Realise that's probably going to make some people hate me. There it is. I answered the questions as honestly as I could, and that's where I stand. I'm not going to get into a massive long argument about this because, as I say, politics is dull and boring and horrible, and I don't like it. So whilst I appreciate there are other people in the world who have very different views from me, or would like, again, for me to occupy the extreme that they have camped out on, if you're thinking of engaging me in a political discourse in the comments, don't be too surprised if I don't really latch on to that. What was the most frustrating experience for you whilst working in IT? Well, working in IT support is a customer service role, and customer service roles can be naturally frustrating in many ways. I think probably the most frustrating thing I have to deal with is when the problem is a user problem and the user won't acknowledge that they're causing the problem. So something might go wrong and the user will come and ask for assistance, and you say, okay, well, it's because you're doing that thing there. And you show them the right way through it, and then the same thing happens the next week and they say, it's gone wrong again. And it's just like, no, it hasn't gone wrong, you have. And so after a while, if that becomes a long-term repeating pattern, it turns into people saying, why can't IT ever fix this thing? And actually it's because the thing that needs fixing is you. You need to go off and learn how to use a computer properly. So that's the most frustrating thing I think I deal with on a daily basis. Have I ever thought of metal detecting? Yes, I've got quite a decent metal detector, but I haven't really had a chance to take it out yet, and I'm planning to do that soon. How do I get ideas on how to scam the scammers? It may appear from the way I present my videos that I have a grand plan when I go in, because I often present them with a theme. In reality, that theme develops over the course of the conversation, so it's not necessarily a plan at the start. Generally speaking, I will tend to play by ear, but sometimes I do have a plan to, okay, well, let's do a speed run, or let's try and divert the conversation eternally. I really love the tablecloth you have in your videos. Where did you buy it? I bought it at The Range, which is a big hardware and houseware superstore in the UK. It's just a piece of vinyl table covering that we got off the roll. Unfortunately, this pattern is now discontinued, so I can't get any more of it. No hate, but why is your house decorated like my grandma's? Well, no offence taken. Well, for one thing, I'm old enough to be a grandparent, although not necessarily your grandparent, so I am of that generation. But also, I really like pattern and colour and intricate decoration. So I like all of these things, and so that I've surrounded myself with a lot of those things. It's really as simple as that. Will you ever do gaming? Probably not. I'm not that good at gaming. I don't really play games very much at all, because for me they're a huge time suck. I probably won't do much gaming on this channel. It would be a bit weird if I did, because I'm not that good at it. Have you ever fallen for a scam in the past and that's why you wind them up all the time? No, not really. Most of the time, the reason why I'm winding scammers up is because I have a moral objection to what they're doing, a moral and ethical objection to what they're doing. I want them to stop, and so I want to inconvenience them as much as possible. Closest I've come to falling for a scam was I was importing a product from China. I knew there were going to be import taxes and duty on it, and I got an email, apparently from FedEx, saying we need to collect the import duties and taxes. I clicked on a link. I went through to a website that looked like FedEx, but in fact it wasn't. I got halfway through filling in the form, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, there's just something not right here. And it turns out that was a scam website. They were going to take some money from me for nothing. They're probably going to steal my bank account details and other credentials too. So that's the closest I came. I managed to back out and no damage done. But no, I've never actually been completely taken by a scam. Do you ever laugh out loud at a scam email, how obviously fake it is? Yeah, all the time, all the time. They are so inept sometimes, and sometimes they're doing that on purpose because they want to trap people who are too gullible to notice that. But yeah, quite often I get a good laugh out of these things. Do you tell people you meet about your channel? Not really, unless the conversation turns around to that. If a genie came to your house, what would be your 3 wishes? Now, this is really difficult. Now, assuming this isn't one of these trick things where whatever I wish for turns out to backfire on me,
I don't know what 3 wishes would be, but I think my first wish would be that karma as a concept works a little bit better than it currently does. I would quite like it if the world was arranged in such a way that people trying to do bad things on purpose got a bad payback quite quickly. And I'm sure that if that happened, we would all have to adjust our ways. But I guess that's what I'd wish for. And maybe I'd destroy the universe in doing so. I don't know what the other 2 wishes would be. What would be my superpower if I had one? Flight, I think. I would quite like to be able to fly, but only if I was invulnerable as well and super strong. So I would, yeah, can I be Superman? So that's the end of the questions I'm going to answer for today. As I say, I'm going to go back to that thread on the original video and I will answer every one of your questions if I can. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.